Spider-Man, brand new day. Just got out of the theater, wanted to give some thoughts on it, the good, the bad, and I'll put in some spoilers and a timestamp so that people can jump to that if that's what you want to hear. If you don't want to hear it, you can avoid it. Um, I'll preface this with the fact that I'm not a huge superhero guy, not a big Spider-Man guy. I saw No Way Home, I saw Far From Home, but I kind of watched them and instantly put them out of my mind as soon as I was done with them. I was kind of like, okay, it's a new generation of Spider-Man. Maybe I've outgrown it a little bit. I love the first Spider-Man film with Tobey, the 2002 one. I know a lot of people's favorite are actually the second one in that trilogy, but I love the first one the most. I thought the third one was just one of the worst films I've ever seen. So you kind of know where I'm coming from. The Garfield films were okay. I thought Reptile was an awesome villain in that, but aside from that, not a huge Spider-Man guy. The last great superhero film I saw, I thought Endgame was fantastic. Just the battle scenes alone, the whole climax was very gripping. And then before that, probably Man of Steel. So, I'm a picky guy when it comes to films. I'm not just gonna go crazy over a pretty mediocre film, but this film has me a little conflicted because I actually thought there were some moments of brilliance in here and then some moments where the writing really let me down, and I think a lot of the interpersonal relationships, if you've been watching these films over the span of nearly a decade now and you're in your teens or you're a young adult and you grew up with this stuff, it's going to mean a lot more to you than it does to me, especially if you're a fan of Spider-Man in the comics. And I love the beginning of this film where they're showing kind of a montage of Spider-Man versus a few select villains and what he's been dealing with. And it was a bit cheesy and whatnot, seeing Spider-Man take like an Advil for a headache, but I'm just like, okay, whatever, I'm going to let this slide. But I thought it was very cool, very true to the comics. I wasn't a huge fan of John Bernthal's performance in this. I don't think he's a good fit for the Punisher. Me, I'm more of a fan of the 2004 Punisher, which isn't even a great film in and of itself, but I feel like Thomas Jane had a much better look for Punisher. Punisher to me is a dude who's jacked under that leather jacket. He's a massive dude, strong dude. He's a gunslinger. He's serious, he's dark. And Bernthal kind of brings this strange levity to the character. And I know that's writing, but I don't know. It's just John Bernthal to me. I don't see him as the Punisher. And that's the problem with casting Zendaya, Bernthal, Holland, and so many things. It becomes hard to see them as the characters that they kind of built their careers on because they're just in everything now. So you're kind of just seeing the celebrity first, the actor first, and then the character, which is a bit of a problem for me. It took me a while to get over that, but once I did, I realized Tom Holland is a pretty solid actor, especially in the more dramatic parts of the film. And Zendaya, who I usually feel like underplays stuff and just it's either underplaying or overacting with her, but I feel like in this film as Mary Jane, she's actually pretty solid. I feel like this is one of her better roles. She does it well, and I felt like the writing wasn't the best, but I felt like her acting was definitely up to snuff. The Ned character, that's an awful character. I don't even really want to discuss him. I feel like his character is completely useless. I guess he's in the comic. I'm not sure. I didn't double check. But the actor, no offense, is just one of the worst actors in working in Hollywood right now. There's nothing believable about his character. He's just doing a cliche nerd, but it's almost just bad acting with his awkwardness. It's not like he's just such a bad actor and the character's so terribly written that I don't care about that character. Every scene with that guy was just very cringeworthy to me and just unbelievable, and I could not suspend disbelief at all. I mean, I more so believed that Spider-Man was fighting, a robotic scorpion villain in the middle of the city than this kid. So whatever. I did want to comment on one scene in this film, which was so funny to me because I'm 37. I'm a millennial. So I grew up on 90s films, early 2000s films. And I feel like a lot of those films obviously paved the way for films now, but they were also much more stylized and much more original and came up with just a lot more creativity in the execution of their scenes, their writing. You have a lot of modern day classics from the 90s. And there's a film called Fallen. If you're a cinephile, you obviously know it. 1998, I think. Denzel Washington might be before that, so don't hold me to it. Denzel Washington, John Goodman, Gandolfini's even in that film, and it's a movie about a police officer who's chasing down this guy who was executed. He's a criminal, and it's a horror mystery type of film where this guy is able to haunt the souls of people, even in death, you know, and this detective Denzel Washington's figuring it out, why and how this is happening, and it's a very creepy film. And there's a scene in this film that emulates to a T the most famous scene in that film. And so I don't really want to spoil it. I'll talk about it more in spoilers, but I thought that was a really well executed scene, at least for a PG-13 film, you know, that kids are going to watch. But I love that they emulated such a classic type of horror 90s scene in a Spider-Man movie. It was unexpected and it was very cool. And part of me was just confused as to like, oh, they ripped that straight from Fallen. But part of me was also like, that's cool, man, because that's a great scene that I grew up with. So why not show it to a new generation of movie watchers? So I'm going to get into spoilers now. It's hard to talk about a film without spoiling it. So if you're going to go see it, enjoy it. If you're not, enjoy your day regardless. And if you want to hear more about the film and some spoilers, then stick with me here. So this film is advertised sort of like a mystery. You know, there's a villain, you know, there's a big baddie. I'm sure if you're a diehard comic book fan or diehard Spider-Man fan, you probably figured it out already or done enough research to know what's going on. Or maybe I'm being dumb and there's been a lot of exposure and maybe they've released the villain already, but I hadn't heard anything of it. I know in the preview you can see Scorpion talking to Spider-Man and he's like, "Oh, you think I'm Scorpion?" So you kind of realize there's something else at play here. So the big baddie of the film, oh, I guess not the big baddie, but at least in the first half of the film is Jean Grey. So they reveal that this psychic who's taking over bodies and souls and transferring them and causing all this havoc is Jean Grey. And it kind of comes out of nowhere, but I kind of had this feeling they kind of give you some hints along the way where it's like a psychic X-Men. They showed the X-Men trailer right before the film too, so I was kind of just putting two and two together. And Jean Grey is basically hunting like something called VMAX, which they keep mentioning in the film, but they never actually explain it. I guess it's like they say it could be alien tech or a secret weapon, but they don't explain it. I guess that's for the next film. So that was really annoying me. I was like, why don't they explain what this VMAX stuff is? So she's looking for VMAX, but she's not really looking for VMAX. She's looking for VMAX because she's looking for her sister, Sarah Grey, right? I guess that's where they're holding her. Maybe VMAX is something they don't explain it. It's obviously for the next film, and I'll explain why I keep saying that. But so Jean Grey's looking for basically controlling everyone, and I mean it feels kind of random because she's just toying with Peter because she keeps like there's a cool scene where she actually infiltrates Mary Jane, and I was like, you know what, that's a clever scene because you're not quite sure if Mary Jane it has her memory back or if there's something at play there, and then you realize like, oh, it's Jean actually like inside her mind. And I was like, okay, that's some good writing there. Finally they got me with something here. So that was interesting. And she's just causing all this trouble, and that's how she actually moves. Like she actually just keeps absorbing people, and I felt like the visual effects for that looked fantastic. It looked really smooth, and all the CG in this film sans the Hulk, because the Hulk is fully CG. So every scene with him looks a little too animated and cartoony for me, but everything else looked fantastic. I mean, when the Punisher's taking hard falls, when Spidey is fighting and webbing people, I felt it all looked so real. Like I'm obviously looking at something fake, but I mean, I thought the cinematography was very impressive, especially the web slinging and him carrying Mary Jane. Some very, very thoughtful scenes in this one in regards to Spider-Man's psyche, and sometimes he'll be upset and you can tell by the way he's like slinging the web, you know, that he's upset. And I was like, these are very cool moments, you know, this shows some skillful filmmaking, and I really like that. It was very artful, and so I appreciated that. And I can't say there were too many dull moments in this film, you know, which is something I appreciated so greatly because I really haven't seen a great film in so long. The last good film I'd say I saw was I liked Sinners. You know, Sinners was entertaining enough. It wasn't some like great film, but it was very entertaining. It never had me bored. I liked 28 Years Later. I know some people will disagree with that, but I kind of connected to that film just on a different level. And so those are the past, you know, over the past couple years, some films that I thought were great because I've seen a few and a lot of them were just not good at all. So this one was like on not necessarily on the level of Sinners, but it was definitely on the level of those films where I wasn't ever bored. There were a few films Sorry, there were a few scenes where I was incredibly bored, where MJ was talking to Peter, and it was just so badly written about how she finds his note and realizes she lost her memory and she's talking to him, not in the third person per se, but just in a way where it was like, okay, like you're talking to him, you don't have your memory, but you're talking about what if, and you don't love him, and they really tried to get that point across. So I don't know. I didn't really like those. I didn't think they were well written. But the Jean Grey scenes were interesting. There's this group called Damage Control trying to get after her, and they finally do kidnap her. And Spider-Man basically gives Jean Grey up to them because she's causing so much havoc. She's infiltrating people's minds and doing all this stuff, and there's no clear motive behind what she's doing. Then once Damage Control has her, they're basically trying to study her mind. But this all felt a little rushed. I feel like they could have spent a little more time on this. And so a lot of stuff happens like in the course of 30 minutes, and it was a little annoying that they didn't elaborate more. And Jean Grey also seems to be like extending her power, so I was excited that maybe she would turn into the Phoenix this film. She doesn't, but it seems like they're kind of building up to that because her ability to jump, they put this limit of 33 feet on it, which created kind of a cool scene early in the film, but then just didn't make any sense later in the film because she breaks through it regardless when they piss her off. But she doesn't really reach her like full power. And you know, Spider-Man tries to save her, and for some reason Frank Castle sets up a sniper to snipe her, but then Spider-Man takes the bullet because in the time that Frank set up the gun, Spider-Man's already had his mind infiltrated, and she's like, sorry about your aunt, and he's like, sorry about your sister, and they bond in the in the course of like 2 minutes. And I was like, this is so rushed for me, you know? And I get it's a superhero film and stuff like that, but that's why I love like the 2002 Spider-Man, because everything was fleshed out. The Defoe character was fleshed out, the Goblin, it makes sense, you know? I don't feel like Jean Grey was overused in this one, or her psychic powers were overused. I feel like they were used in an artful and cool way, but I just felt like her story arc was somewhat rushed. And the scene with her sister Sarah teaching her how to use the power was also really fantastic. And that's why I like when they use lesser known actors and actresses, because you can really believe that they're these people, you know, instead of just seeing another Bernthal, another Holland, another Zendaya. I'm just like, okay, let's see some lesser known actors, right? Just so we can actually get into these characters for what they are. But it's not a bad film altogether. I really like the Scorpion fight scenes early on, the Hulk fight scene where Spider-Man's with the Punisher and they're trying to shoot him up. I felt like the CG was fantastic in that one. But there's just a lot of like jokes written in for a theater full of preteens, and I get that. And if you're young enough to enjoy the film, you'll enjoy it. And if you love Spider-Man, you will love this film. I'm just looking at it through the lens of a guy who's a little older now. I've seen a lot of superhero films, little disappointed with films lately, but this was a solid film. It was mostly entertaining, you know? So that's all I can say. That's really it. Overall, I'm going to be very specific with my rating, and some people might think this is a low rating, but it's really not. I was just thinking, you know, 6.5 felt a little high for me. 5.5 felt a bit low for me. So I'm going to give it like a 5.9. Okay. That's my rating for this film. Some people might think that's incredibly rude. It's not. That's a good score for the state of Hollywood right now. If I can give a film near a 6, that's fantastic, because I've seen some awful films lately. I mean, I've seen some absolute classics, and I would rate them in the low 9s or the high 8s. You know what I mean? So my favorite films of all time aren't even 10s. So that's really that. Spider-Man, Brand New Day. It's a good film. If you like what I'm doing here, I'll have more predictions coming soon. I'm looking forward to the new Resident Evil film and maybe some more summer blockbusters before the season ends. So thanks again for watching.